Disclaimer. The material in this podcast is not to be taken as a replacement for therapeutic services. This is for entertainment purposes and represents the sole perspectives of the individuals involved. If you are experiencing an emergency, please contact the appropriate authorities or professionals.
Hello, welcome back to episode 2 of season 2 of the TikDocs podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Katelyn Baker, otherwise known as That Fat Doctor.
And I am your other host, Dr. Terrell DeGans, aka That Black Doctor.
Today we have quite a doozy for you today, folks. We're gonna get real personal, and I'm a little nervous about it, but we're gonna dive right in. So our topic today is breakups, doing it, recovering from it, grieving with it, all the nitty-gritty of breakups.
And we know you guys have all experienced this in your lives. If you haven't, lucky for you. But it is a major part of any relationship. A lot of people go through it. A lot of people are going through it now. Maybe you'll listen to this in a month, a year, whatever, and you'll really resonate with it. But it's important that we talk about this, and we're going to be really personal.
Yeah, because as announced in my last episode, your girl is going through a divorce. So time-wise, I just felt like it was appropriate to bring this up and be able to talk about it from a personal experience. T, I know, has been through some stuff and is no longer in that place, so you'll get that perspective too from someone who's fully healed and well, maybe not fully, but mostly healed.
No, she was, aren't we?
So we'll go with mostly healed and recovered and is thriving and in a positive and loving new relationship. So have those two aspects going on. So if you're feeling nosy and want to know about my story, stay tuned because here we go. So breakups.
So let's start with the basics, right? Because we want to destigmatize a lot of things that come with that.
Yeah.
The idea of breaking up is this thing that everyone thinks, oh, it's going to be this terrible thing, or people are afraid of it because it's going to come with this sense of loneliness and all this stuff. And the first thing I want to throw out there is, yes, a breakup can make you feel more lonely, but you have to think, was I more lonely in the relationship than I am outside of it? And that's a huge indicator that it may not be the right relationship for you. What are your thoughts and what are your feelings on that?
Oh, feelings. I have lots of feelings. Not so many thoughts though. Yeah, I think that for me, that was one of the deciding factors in deciding to end my marriage, was that it just felt like two roommates, and it was a pretty lonely experience. And I didn't necessarily realize that until other people pointed it out, or I had a better understanding of what relationships could be. Mm-hmm. And you don't realize in the moment what's necessarily what's normal and what's not. But I think that the loneliness was one thing that I didn't recognize until I realized I was constantly talking to friends, always on my phone, in social media, making friends online, and not actually talking and conversing with my partner. And I think it was to fill that void that I was feeling. And I want to preface this with absolutely no shade to my partner, my former partner. We both made mistakes. I was not perfect. Just together, we were not perfect. And this has nothing to do with bashing him. It's more just about the recovery process and the feelings associated with it. So if you're here to be nosy or to try to report back to him that I'm bashing him online, no, that's not what's going to happen. That will never happen. He's a wonderful person. We just were not great together. So
yeah. And that links to something like I always start my sessions with when I have new clients, and that's the most important thing is goodness of fit. You want to make sure you're with the right person, whether it be therapeutically or in a personal relationship. And breakups are difficult. Even in friendships, breakups are really difficult. because you have to continue to grow together if you find out that you're compatible in the first place. And some people aren't compatible from the beginning, but they want that connection so badly that they ignore a lot of red flags. And I can say for my instances of breakups, which I have plenty, and we can definitely go down a lot of those storylines. But
Best of luck to you.
yeah, for the moment. But yeah, there inevitably came a time where it felt like there just wasn't a fit anymore. I certainly wasn't happy in the relationships that I ended. And in times where I was broken up with, that person realized like there were major things that they were not okay with. And that's okay. And coming out from the other side, being able to put those things in my past, I recognize I'd rather be alone, but not lonely. I would rather be alone and not unhappy than be with someone and know that I'm going to continue to be unhappy. And that is my personal choice and my preference. And I know that going into a breakup is not easy for the person doing it, and definitely not easy for the person being broken up with. But ultimately, it's better for both of you. And that's the really difficult pill to swallow.
Yeah, I think that was really well said and true for probably most people experiencing this, that it's messy. It's just messy, but it's necessary a lot of the times. If you have the feelings or the gut instinct that something isn't right, it normally is because it isn't right. And like T said, we ignore those red flags or whatever due to many circumstances. Mine was that I had been with the same person since I was 17 years old and literally didn't know any different. And again, not that it was some terrible relationship, but it was just like little things that I wish I had listened to my gut, or wish that I had just maybe done differently to have a different outcome in life. And I didn't. I ignored those signals because I wanted it to work and I wanted to be this, happy heteronormative couple. And that is the most inauthentic thing now for me. So yeah, breakups suck. Breakups, they suck. But I think sometimes it's better than the alternative of staying where you're unhappy, or whatever your case is, unwanted, or not being loved or honored in the right ways. And sometimes it feels like going through the actual breakup is going to be worse than what you're currently dealing with. And I can promise you, based on personal and professional experience, that it's gonna suck. It's gonna hurt. You are going to go through some stuff that you didn't realize, but in the end, you'll be okay.
And to the decent percentage of the people looking at their partners right now who are like, should I? Let's start with this. Talk to them, right? Really honestly talk to them. And I want to emphasize the difference between talking to and talking at someone. Come in with questions. Even if you know the answers, you may not know as much as you think. Do you really feel this way about this? Do you really think this? Here are my thoughts on this topic. This is something that's really important to me. I feel like you feel this way. What are your actual thoughts? Really get to know who that person is, even for things that you thought you knew, because you might be surprised. It may bring you closer. It may give you more of a realization, but ultimately you're going to know more, and having more knowledge only helps the relationship in one way or another.
Yeah.
And you're right. Breakups suck. They're terrible. But I see them as like the parents that are giving their kids chicken pox on purpose. Like, I'd rather you have it now and have to deal with this way down the line when it's significantly worse.
That's a terrible analogy, but I kind of like it. Yeah. I think it sucks. It's and personally, the hardest thing that I've ever experienced. And I think that that's the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. I'll be okay, because it's, in the grand scheme of things, people break up, people get divorced. It happens. It's happening all the time. But I wanted to talk about a little bit, tie into some psychology here about grieving someone that's not dead, because that's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's my specialty, so that's wonderful, right? Well,
Oh,
one
look at that.
of my many unreasonable specialties. Here's the thing: a loss is a loss is a loss. You can feel the same through losing someone in a relationship as you do losing them in life. When you no longer have that connection, it hurts because it's severed. There's really no peaceful separation. Even if you're doing everything amicably, you're not just giving up what you've experienced in your mind, you're also giving up the potential future. And that's probably the hardest part to let go of.
Yeah.
And the support is never really there. And it's not because people aren't trying and people aren't willing. It's because people aren't aware and they don't know what to say or how to say it. You're going to hear a lot of platitudes, right? In both situations, whether it's actual like death loss or if it's just grieving a loss or breakup, right? Oh, I'm so sorry. Things are going to get better. This is what God wants for you. You're going to hear all those platitudes. And then that comes from this idea that I don't know what to say. This makes me nervous to think about. Here's something that I heard someone say once that should be helpful in this situation, which means the intent is to be comforting, but the execution is piss poor. Here's what you can do. Hey, I know this is probably difficult for you. Maybe it isn't. I don't really know, but I want to be here for you. Here's what I'm going to do. And then fill in the blank, right? I want to get you dinner a couple times. Let's go out for drinks. You don't have to think about it. Do something. Make it an action. But don't give that person the burden of choice. If I go to you and say, hey, what do you want to do? You're already not in the mindset to be thinking normally. The last thing you'll do is have another decision to make in this moment. Say, hey, when you're hungry, let me know. I'm going to take us out, right? I'll make that decision. The only thing you have to do is be aware of your hunger. Or if it's been a while and you haven't said anything, hey, you know what? Let's just go out right now. You might be hungry. You might just benefit from a walk. Let's go. Being the person that just does and offers and actually follows through is significantly better than just giving a false platitude. You're in my prayers is nice, but we actually want to show that we care.
I think a good example of that, that I can use between T and I when I was going through mine was, I really went into myself, and occasionally T would text and just be like, everything okay over there? And then there were also times where I felt that I could use like T and I's text messages as just like a venting space, because I knew that he was a safe person and he wasn't. I think he knew sometimes what I was doing and that I was just using it to vent, because I knew that he would respond in a way that I needed him to respond, which was just like, I hear you, that sucks. And that's really what I needed. So that's, I think, is a good example of what he's talking about. Exactly. Like being there for someone in a way that doesn't put any more pressure or cause them to have to make decisions or ask for help. If you offer, it's wonderful, but offer with directness and kind of offer with a plan. It's not just an empty sentiment, which drives me up the wall, and I can't wait until I announce this on my social media, because I haven't yet, and I'll get all of those, which again are very well meaning and nice, but it's more about that other person getting that off their chest and feeling like they extended, I think, an arm of sympathy, and it makes them feel better about themselves versus what it actually does for the person. Which, after I tell my story, I think the best thing for people to be would just be like, great, can't wait to see what new content you come up with now that you have more free time. Like, that's what I need. I don't need the sympathy anymore. So if you see any of my posts, there you go. There's a hint.
There you go. And yeah, to speak to that point earlier, I don't want to put the burden on you to be like, yeah, come reach out when you're like, you have so many things on your plate. I know I haven't spoken to you in a while, so hey, you've crossed my mind. Let me offer an opportunity to speak. If you want to take it, you want to take it. If you don't, you don't. But that's the type of thing that helps people to know that there are connections outside of whatever is in their head. And that's what we want to encourage other people to do. So
Yes.
you may not be able to be physically present, but you can always be a presence in that person's mind.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, there are plenty of times where T would text me and I would just ignore him. As
Used to it.
But again, like just knowing that person is there, or knowing that that has been extended to you is enough sometimes, I think. But I think this grief piece of having someone go on existing when you're no longer in their life is really painful. You get those urges to check in. How are things? What are you doing with your life? But it's no longer your place to know those things. It's a privilege that after a breakup, like you don't get that. That's really hard. Seeing them still, if they're active on social media or like Snapchat, and seeing their stories and them continuing to live their life without you, and then having you completely in the dark of what their life consists of now, it just hurts. It feels like, I don't want to be as dramatic to say as like a knife, but like it just kind of is just stuck there. And then every time you see something, it just goes a little bit further, and you miss them, but it's more convoluted and complicated than just missing them, because it's missing the relationship, it's missing those comfort pieces that existed, it's missing the, like you mentioned earlier, the future possibilities of what could have been. If I stayed in a heteronormative relationship, I probably would have a kid or adopting in that process. Now, I always said like this was a time range I wanted to do that in, and it's grieving those things that you thought you would have, or the way that you thought your life would be, and it's no longer that way. And how do you recover from that? How do you even begin to imagine new futures and new beginnings when you're in that kind of limbo place between, we just broke up and there's that future is gone, versus I have a new future ready and waiting? It's not as simple as like, this chapter is over, okay, next. I wish it was that simple, but it's absolutely not. Do you have any? You have words of wisdom. Go ahead. I'm waiting.
Yeah. Dr. Words of Wisdom at your service. So yeah, that feeling of that initial separation is, I feel like you started that cut, right? Like straight down the middle, you're completely severing what was there, but it's never complete in that first try. There's always these resulting emotions and all these processes, and you're slowly kind of continuing that cut. And social media has made it so much worse than it was before, because then you would like maybe hear from a friend here and there, oh yeah, they said they're doing great, or they're not doing that well, and like you'll get a little bit of feedback. Maybe you'll actually search for it, maybe you won't. But now it's readily there. You
in your
can
face
see,
when you don't want it to be sometimes. Yeah.
and it's almost always just a positive version of what's happening, even if it's not true. So speaking just of my own experience, and I'm sure this will speak to a lot of people who are listening, like it hurts to see that person's name still pop up. It hurts to see how you save them, how the messages have gone over time. It hurts to experience that. And there were times for myself where I would say, I don't want to look at these anymore. I don't want to look at these pictures, look at these videos. But then I would inevitably find myself going through it. And it's like, fuck, like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm not doing this today. I'm not doing this tomorrow. And I would inevitably do it again and again, to the point where the only thing that stopped me was I saw something that made me feel, okay, she's moved on. I should move on too. And it was still very difficult, but it was the only justification I could give myself to stop doing what I was doing, because it was just hurting me more and more to go through that. And it's a difficult process, and getting through that is not easy at all. But if you can completely set that boundary, it's going to hurt more in that moment, but you get to start the recovery process sooner. And that's what really gets you to a better place. And just to quickly tie in that last part of wishing you had like a new chapter to start, a lot of people try that. It won't hurt me as bad if I just jump into a new relationship. There's this new thing here, but you also have to consider the attachments that you brought from the last one not being fully severed. They're looking for new connections. So you have to be really aware of what you're trying to replace and what you're trying to undo. And a lot of people don't look into that, and it leads them kind of repeating maladaptive patterns.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the definition of what a rebound is, right? After a big breakup, you go and find the next person that's going to give you those same feelings that you're missing of being loved, being wanted, which at that point, if you were the one that was broken up with, you may feel like you're not loved and not wanted. So you're, of course, going to seek those things out. And if you were the person who did it, then you're going to be who did the breaking up. Sometimes it's that same way, or it's trying to find that person that you wished that other person had been. It's going to be searching to find, what was missing, and they both end up the same way, normally not well. I would highly recommend, after any breakup, and this is also a personal thing, taking some time, setting boundaries with people who want to be in a romantic relationship with you afterwards, being open and honest that you're in your healing process still, and what that looks like, and honestly, even couples therapy to help sort through some of that, because this other person, it's not as simple as just jumping into the next relationship. You're carrying everything with you. You're still trying to heal and grow, but you still can have human connection and human love while healing. I think that is a possibility, whereas before I didn't think that those two could coexist, that you could be grieving and also beginning something again. But I think that if you do it in a way that's communicative and open and full of boundaries and understanding and all of those fun, lovely buzzwords, I think it can be done. Do you have opinions on that?
I also think it can be done. I think the most important piece is the awareness. Like, you really have to be aware of what were the thoughts that were coming from my past relationship that I just kept either pushing aside or I held on to no matter what. And was it something that was helpful for me, or was it something that was making the relationship a little bit more difficult to let go of because I just really wanted to hold on to this idea? And that first person is going to then have to take that burden, whether or not they knew it was coming or not. I'm so afraid that you're going to talk like this, act like this, respond like this when I have these natural emotions, when I have these thoughts. It's now your job to prove that you're not my ex. And that's a burden that they'll never fully understand, because we don't fully understand it. And we need that awareness to say, I'm trying not to act in the same way. And if I do, I'm not going to hold the sins of the past against you.
Yeah.
And that's a really important piece of this.
It's really tricky. And this to be too, not necessarily just talking about rebounds, but it could be a year later and you're still healing and still trying to do these things. So it doesn't matter the time constraint and what we're talking about in terms of moving on and healing. It's about grieving your past relationship while trying to enter into a new one, whatever the timeline is for that. Shit's hard, dude.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely is. But this is all to the point that once you've gotten that awareness, once you've really made that separation, you set those boundaries and you really start to develop who you are as an individual, That's when the most growth comes in. That's when you start doing things that you really like for yourself. That's when you start growing yourself in the career path that you want to do. That's when you start realizing what your hobbies are, where you find love and passion without anybody else's influence. That's the best part. And who knows what comes after that.
I really love that. I love that. There is beauty to be found in breakups. Even if it was, not a bad relationship, or if it was a bad, there's still beauty to be found. There's self to be discovered. There's um, different patterns and different circumstances out there that are now available that maybe weren't before. And I think it's a really beautiful thing, and it speaks to me on a personal level, because after that I shaved my head. I am very out and proud about my sexuality now, whereas I wasn't before. I have an amazing group of friends who, even before, I would have been nervous bringing around because they're just a little eccentric, but like that's who I am, and that's why I vibe with those people. And I started making patterns and connections that I didn't know existed, in my own head, and like noticed things about myself that I just ignored for so long because I wanted them to be gone. So despite how difficult breakups are, and I don't want to minimize that at all, because they're a doozy, trust me. Laying on the floor, bathroom floor for days, they're bad.
Mhm.
But I think the best part is the beauty that comes after. Even though that beauty is maybe not recognizable until way in the future, it's still there because you're growing and thriving and becoming more resilient, becoming more of who you are. You find out more of what you want for your life and for your future. And through the breakups, there's always lesson learned. And I know that that's very cliche, but having been through it, it's changed me forever in a good way. And I hope anyone out there who's going through this, something similar, or has been in the past, or if you're in your regrowth phase, or you're about to break up, wherever you are, please know that you're gonna be okay. And I know that's so cliche. I know it is. But just Dr. Katelyn on this one. It's gonna be okay.
And I'm really glad you spoke to that lesson piece, because that's something that I held with myself for many a year. Probably since the beginning of high school, junior high school, I started to think every relationship came for a reason, and the reason would be the lesson that came from it.
Mm.
And I would struggle to find what that reason was, but inevitably it would come to me. And the last breakup that ultimately led to a positive ending overall, but still the lesson that I got from that was, one, I need to make sure that I'm being really honest with myself, and then honest with my partner. If they're going to be my partner, they should be treated as such.
Mm-hmm.
Two, in all of the things that I've thought before, I had to kind of decouple where I saw priorities, because they weren't really suiting anyone outside of myself, and that led to a lot of breakdowns. And in terms of and there's plenty more, but in terms of the actual breakup itself, I had a previous rule from one of my earliest relationships where I thought, never double back, right? If you've left, you're left that situation for a reason. You need to just continue moving. And I learned that never double back until you understand why.
Mm.
Because if you can resolve that, maybe that's the right thing for you. And if you can't, then you can continue without having to think about it.
Mm.
But understand why that breakup happened, understand your component, understand your former partner's component. And if there are parts that can be reconciled, you can work on that. Maybe it becomes a friendship, and it should have always been a friendship. Maybe it can be a rekindling the relationship, or maybe you were never meant to be in the first place, but at least you'll know for sure.
Mm.
And that's really the ultimate lesson I got from my most recent breakup. And it really helped me to understand that there was way more than I was admitting to myself when I had first gone through it.
I think that's a beautiful way to end today. So if you manage to make it this far and keep track of our non-tangential thinking and talking, congratulations.
You're better than us.
So we are back obviously in full swing. New episodes coming weekly, bi-weekly. I haven't quite decided yet, but
On a regular enough cadence.
regular, yeah, when I am feeling not depressed. We're hashtag breakup recovery. But we appreciate you all so much. I hope that this was helpful in some way or some form. If you have any questions, comments, please feel free to reach out to us either on Instagram at TheTikDocs or our email, which is TheTikDocs@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. And if you have any topics you want us to cover, any comments, if T said something way off the wall, please let him know, because he's
happens all the time.
all the time.
Happens all the time. I can't keep my mouth shut.
All right, y'all. I hope you have a fantastic week. Dr. Katelyn, Dr. T, out.
Peace out.